What's good, everyone? This is Micro here, and today I wanted to give you this video on the character guide for Hawkeye. In summary, he is literally not just a 1-to-1 ratio character from anyone from Overwatch, even though he definitely resembles very similar to Hanzo. He has the damage of Hanzo, but he has the defensive capabilities of Genji, where he can use his katana to deflect projectiles back at enemy targets, and he can use his katana to also strike back at enemies too, to knock them back a little bit so that he can position himself away from divers such as Hulk or even Black Panther. To start things off, I want to quickly highlight exactly what his abilities are. I know it's been a couple days now, and there's been other guys that quickly highlights what his abilities moveset is, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Basically, his basic attack is just piercing arrow. He basically shoots basic, arrows at your enemies. The caveat to this is the longer you hold the charge time for your arrow, the more damage is done. Very much with Hanzo in Overwatch and Overwatch 2, whereas the longer you hold your cast time before you unleash your arrow, it does more damage and your arrow does go farther. It seems like that is fairly similar to the case with Hawkeye, whereas you hold down the left click, and once the charge bar hits 100%, you would do massive damage to any enemy hero. Whereas you could also just, rapidly left click and he'll just do volleys of arrows. That'll do less damage, but still good enough if you are being attacked by divers such as Black Panther, Hulk, or any other dive heroes. However, you can toggle to his secondary basic attack, which is called the blast arrow, where he shoots 3 arrows, across in front of him at a range that does explosive AoE damage. And then on to his abilities, we'll start off with his ultimate, which is called Hunter's Sight. He basically enters into an ideal state where he can see after images of the enemy team, and the thing with Hawkeye during this time is that you can actually shoot at the after images from the enemy team, and you can still do damage to the after images, which will then go back to the enemies themselves. Now, even though that the after images doesn't take lethal head damage, which is critical hits, you do have max charge power throughout the duration of the ultimate, so you don't have to worry about your windups. You can just do your volley of arrows and just aim at the after images, and you'll still do huge amounts of damages. The next ability is called Crescent Slash, where he unleashes a katana and knocks enemy away from him. This is really good, CC ability to not restrain your enemies, but to knock them back. And if you time it really well, you could use the Crescent Slash on someone who's coming a little too close to you. You can knock them back a little bit into the air, and then you can use your piercing arrow to see if you can quickly pick off that critical hit headshot before they land to the ground. It does take some time, but I'm pretty sure that is possible. Next ability is called Hypersonic Arrow, which basically he shoots an arrow, it shoots a whirlwind effect, however it does additional damage to enemies who are in its path. This ability, if you aim it above your LOS, your line of sight, above the waist, and if you hit any enemies who are airborne, such as Iron Man or Storm or Doctor Strange, the hypersonic arrow will cause them to come crashing down to the ground. So it's basically like an anti-air ability as well. His next ability is called Run and Slash, where he can use his basic ability with his katana to deal basic damage to enemies in front of him. However, this is the ability where it's very similar to Genji in Overwatch, where he can also deflect all incoming projectiles coming at him. I'm not sure yet if this also includes ultimates, but the fact that you can deflect basic projectiles coming from like Punisher or any other high DPS hero that uses projectiles a lot, that definitely is a good maneuverable ability to kind of keep Hawkeye alive. And if it deflects back at them, that's also another good source of damage dealt to the enemies as well. His movement ability is called Skyward Leap, which basically he's very similar to Moon Knight and Black Panther, where he could just do a double jump. Now his passive ability is kind of what makes Hawkeye very unique compared to Hanzo, which is called Archer's Focus. Basically, the longer you aim at the enemy, it not only improves the focus, but also enhances the damage inflicted by your basic piercing arrow. This is the type of passive ability that sets Hawkeye apart from Hanzo, because in Hanzo and Overwatch, all you need to do is have a really good aim, and you can get critical headshots, you know, from afar, up close. Doesn't matter how long you charge it, as long as you can get that headshot, it is deadly. Whereas with this, because his skill set is already pretty busted as is, this is kind of like a nice, you know, falsetto nerf to Hawkeye, where you cannot, you know, spam chokehold points and just spam your arrows and guarantee a lethal critical hit rate. You know, this kind of makes it so that you have to keep your eyesight on the enemy for at least a couple of seconds to improve your aim, but also improve the damage of piercing the arrow. So this definitely will come in handy for basic team fights on an open maps, but if you're fighting against people in around chokehold points, your damage will fall off quite a bit, but it makes up for, you know, how much damage potential he can definitely inflict outside of chokehold points. And that is it for the basic ability layout for Hawkeye. Like I said, he plays very similar to Hanzo, but he definitely has some defensive capabilities like Genji, and his unique passive just makes him such a unique character, you know, specifically for Marvel Rivals. But the next section I want to talk about is, you know, basic map layout gameplay of how, you know, you could play Hawkeye, not only, you know, with your teammates, but also if you're trying to pick off certain enemies on your own, if you're going outside of your line of sight with your teammates as well. With this basic map layout, and based off of my history of playing Overwatch, you know, fighting against other Hanzo players, the most difficult time I have when I am playing as Torbjorn or even Pharah is when I see a Hanzo on top of a high ground, on top of buildings, on top of ledges, boulders, whatever, picking me off from afar, and I can't even tell where it's coming from. That's because, you know, normally when it comes to team fight, your main focus is what is happening in front of you, straight ahead. For example, you don't take that time to look at all the possible angles that your enemy is coming after you. Therefore, if you have a Hawkeye player in Marvel Rivals who's on the high ground against the enemy lines, it is very easily for, you know, the DPS or the supports or even the tanks on the enemy side to notice where you're at right away, simply because they're focused at what your teammates are doing in front of them. And then what you're doing is you're picking off any, you know, squishy heroes from the high ground, you know, who are either, you know, getting too low or adding too much pressure against your own teammates, etc. And this is what can make a good Hawkeye player very lethal with his passive ability, because during team fights, the longer you can keep your eye on the enemy heroes, the more damage you will do, which then make it easier for you to do headshots, critical hits, lethal damage. They won't know how to react to you in time. If you want to play as Hawkeye, my suggestion is he's definitely not a character that you want him up front with your tanks. You definitely want him somewhere either in the mid or in the back section, but above your teammates. That way, you know, you're still within line of sight with your teammates. If you are running low on health, if someone's picking you off from afar, your support characters can still get to you relatively quickly and heal you back up, or you can go back to them and get healed up, and then you can get back onto high ground to do more damage. Or if you're noticing incoming Spider-Man or another dive hero who's coming to add pressure to you or trying to pick you off, you can easily retreat off the high ground into the midsection or close to your supports, so that it'll make it harder for the dive hero to either pick you off, or, you know, if the dive hero is trying to go after your support characters, like one of your own DPS teammates, that you can easily snipe them back and, you know, either kill them before they kill someone else, or pressure them by getting their HP low enough that you will have to force their hand to retreat. So that's what makes Hawkeye, you know, such a unique character compared to some of the other basic, you know, DPS characters in Marvel Rivals. On the flip side though, what is really good for positioning yourself on high ground, one of the biggest cons is you're not entirely with your teammates all the time, because either you're constantly finding different flank routes where you can position yourself to pick off enemies on the other side during chokehold points, or if you see enemies retreating backwards, you can easily pick them off. You're pretty much by yourself, and one of the caveats to Hawkeye is that he has no healing capabilities whatsoever. Therefore, it is very difficult for you to sustain yourself if you take too much damage relatively quickly. And if you're not nearby a health pack, then that makes you a viable target yourself to get picked off by anybody really. Therefore, health management is somewhat critical to make sure that you don't feed the enemy team too much with your deaths if you're straying too far from your teammates. That's why positioning as a sniper or as an archer, in this case for Hawkeye, is very crucial. Now when it comes to chokehold points or control points maps, there'll be oftentimes where the enemy team is definitely going to be grouped together, and this is probably be one of the best use cases to use your ultimates, especially if you're still above ground against the enemies, because then you can see all the after images all grouped together in a relatively small area. And then if you haven't used any blast arrows, that would be your opportunity to just dump all your blast arrows all at once, do massive AoE splash damage to everyone, and anyone who is still alive. That's when you can just use your fully charged piercing arrows and just pick off whoever is left. Overall, with the damage potential of Hanzo, the defensive capabilities of Genji, and if you train yourself to have a mindset of Obi-Wan Kenobi to always have the high ground against your enemy, you pretty much will position yourself to always have the advantage against many team fights. There'll probably be a few case scenarios where you'll always be at a disadvantages, but it's hard to tell what those type of case scenarios are since the game hasn't came out yet. But in summary, just keep yourself close to your teammates, always stay above ground, and you'll definitely be in a great position to not only deal damage but also retreat back and recuperate and breathe a little bit if you are getting pressured a little too much. I hope you liked this video, and if there's any other characters that you want me to do a comprehensive guide on before the game launches, do let me know in the comments below. And if you also like this type of guide videos, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I'll definitely do updated guide videos on certain characters when the game drops, especially with my own mains that I'll definitely be spending hours playing. But for the time being, I'm keep doing comprehensive guides on any of the new characters that will eventually be released and announced prior to the launch. This is Mikerotastraphy, and I'll catch you guys later.